Chapter 23, The Odmience, Issue 1. The darkness of sleep was devoured by the first blast of light and the sound of shuffling about. The young one in bed put up a hand to fight off the light, but could not ignore the commands to rise. The injuries hadn't healed all the way, but the last week made him anxious. Wstawaj! Ty da via! Russian. Lipov was warning him. The Odmience rose from his bed and clutched his bandaged ribs. The broken arm had recovered, though some pain seemed to linger no matter how long had passed. Stiffness remained more than anything else. Every day since his recovery began, the sounds overhead tormented him. They were faint, but the different hums and rattles still penetrated the deep underground he and Lipov always returned to. As the Odmience pushed off his bed, Lipov nearly forced the uniform into his hands. He hadn't worn it since the night the girl captured him. Despite his recovery time, even touching it again made him uneasy. Lipov wore a blue pullover and had a matching hat seated on a table near his laptop. The makeup he'd applied before waking the Odmience left him a little paler than his natural tone. Laditsnya! Lipov grew more aggressive. You na Savoy, ni na Prersh, ni en Deutschka. The Odmience, naked save for his bandages, stepped into his uniform of pure black and slowly worked the suit up his body. Lipov stood with his glare like fire until he hesitated for a moment with the uniform at his neck. When he did so, Lipov closed the distance, grabbed the throat of the costume, and pulled him close enough that the Odmience could smell his breath, which somehow stank of sweat. Nizot vet mi piolia. Polish. Lipov was not to be trifled with then. The hood was over the Odmience's face as fast as he could pull it. Lipov's glare softened. He raised a hand and stroked the side of the Odmience's face. Good boy. He took the zipper from the back of the mask and slipped him shut. Good boy. Lipov pulled back his hand and slapped the Odmience across one cheek. His apprentice didn't react. Lipov motioned and led him toward the exit. Everything still ached. His cheek, chest, arm, and especially his head. The Odmience wasn't sure he'd recovered enough to go anywhere, but he was in no position to fail Lipov again. Beyond all else, the word Rafal still echoed in his skull. It seemed a lifetime since he heard it, but every memory still made him sick. The Odmience couldn't remember a moment of his life before Lipov, if there had been one at all. In spite of any efforts at imitation, he could never emulate any sounds from the mouths of anyone else he encountered, and for the first 10 years, he'd only ever been Odmience. Only for a few short months, years ago, had he ever known anything else. It began before dawn in Bolesławiec. The two traveled through much of Europe over the years, but Poland always seemed to take a lot of Lipov's attention. 3 months passed since their arrival, and they would depart again in a few hours. Lipov sipped wine in the kitchen of Danshov Georgi, a high-ranking Bratva member who lay dead with a snapped neck in his den. Odmience stood by the fireplace, gasping for breath, and vomited. Time was good. Your constitution's still pathetic. Lipov downed the last of the wine in Georgiev's glass. You're going to keep at it till you get it right. If you have to kill Cain on his deathbed in 30 years, so be it. If there had been anything left in the Odmience's stomach, he'd have vomited again. Georgiev was his 4th kill, and the first time he'd killed more than one man in a year. He never imagined the act could disturb him so. One of the earliest memories was Lipov pulling a knife across a man's throat. The way the man, a blonde with a ponytail, hit the ground and his convulsing body slowly stopped moving was forever burned into the Odmience's mind. But somehow, witnessing a kill was nothing compared to being forced to do it himself. The way their bodies finally froze up, the way everything just stopped. The Odmience didn't even understand it, but every act tormented him. Lipov crossed the den to a pack he tossed aside when they'd arrived. Get changed. We have a train to catch. He pulled out a small package and threw it to his apprentice. Istili ito. The time for recuperation was over. The Odmience unzipped, peeled out of his costume, and slipped into the clothes Lipov provided. A pair of pants and a turtleneck that kept the scar on his throat covered. Lipov opened the packet, a box of makeup. "Hand!" The Odmience put out his hand. Lipov rubbed off some of the foundation and adjusted the coloring a bit before he went to work smearing it all over the scars that covered the Odmience's face. Within minutes of the kill, the two could pass for an innocent father and son just crossing through the city. The two passed through this way many times. The Odmience learned the paths in and out of the city by train before. Lipov said they were headed for Dresden, with a cross over the Bober River viaduct partway through. The Odmience observed this path time and time again. A tiny plan came to mind with each journey, but he always snuffed it out for fear of failure. After that night, however, the idea was again at the forefront of his mind. As if to compensate for the Odmience's still fractured body, Lipov lifted a lot of the night's weight. He'd been making phone calls and researching Gotham's inner workings on the computer in the corner of the hideout for as long as his apprentice needed to regain consciousness. Lipov's plan involved a truck. The Odmience would ride in the back while they went wherever they were going. The Odmience could almost always understand what was being asked or demanded of him, but Lipov limited his communication largely to such commands. Even if the Odmience heard something not intended for him, he didn't usually understand well enough to comprehend what he overheard. The extent he understood was that he'd failed, and probably attracted some unwanted attention from his target's allies. Lipov felt it was time to seek assistance. "I didn't care about the girl before," Lipov said. "She was just a tool for punishing the son of a bitch. But she nearly killed you too." Lipov laid a hand on the Odmience's shoulder as they approached the exit. "She'll pay for that. I'm sure you can't wait to repay Cain's spawn for what she did to you." The Odmience dared not push the hand away. Though he didn't grip the full meaning of Lipov's words, he couldn't shake the feeling of contradiction. As the Odmience and Lipov boarded the train, the boy pored over his thoughts hundreds of times. The Odmience had no understanding of distance. Lipov never allowed him more than a few feet out of his sight. All of the Odmience's attempts to run had ended in failure. He was not confident in this plan, but the thought of being forced to kill again made his gorge rise. The boy didn't know how many times Lipov planned to put him through it, or when they'd finally face the David Cain Lipov always ranted about. Throughout the train ride, the Odmience kept his eyes on the window. Lipov always sprung for the emergency exit rows for extra leg room. He sat in the spot closer to the window, as if in anticipation of the Odmience's plan. The master sat back with his eyes closed, though his student knew better than to believe he'd ever fall asleep. Lipov looked as if he dared the Odmience to try something, just so he could punish him for it. Still, the boy's eyes remained on the window. They were still hours from Dresden, but it felt like days before they reached the bridge he waited for. The Bolesławicz rail viaduct was one of the longest rail bridges in Europe. It stood over 26 meters above the river and ran for 490 meters. To use it as a means for escape was beyond dangerous, but then, so was every additional moment he spent with Lipov. Bolesławicz remained on either side of them, a small forest of trees, and the train was all that kept the Odmience from returning. As the bridge entered his periphery, the boy took a last swallow and stared at the window. They were only seconds from the viaduct, and would only be a few more before the train made it to the other side. If Lipov felt ambitious, he could jump off and follow him back into town. The last seconds came. It was then or never. The boy lunged for the escape lever. His fingers gripped the handle and began to pull back. Without opening his eyes, Lipov grabbed the Odmience's outstretched arm. The look he flashed was like a dog baring his teeth. "Shate!" The Odmience thrust himself toward the window as he forced it open. Already other riders on the train began to turn toward he and Lipov. The master pulled him back and pushed his small body against the seat in front of them. "Shot! Te!" The Odmience pushed and kicked. From the corner of his eye, he saw the bridge fast approaching. He had only inches to go. All he had to do was reach the window, tuck, and roll. Escape was so close. "Uszans!" Lipov's Polish only made his reaction more extreme. Usually those words forced him into uncomfortable stillness, but not that day. The chance, maybe the last chance, would slip through the Odmience's fingers in a few seconds. The student gripped one of Lipov's hands and bit the side with all his strength. Lipov shouted as the boy's mouth filled with blood. The bridge was just outside the window. The Odmience leapt. His perfect tuck and roll could only do so much when the child's body flew out the train window at over 30 miles an hour. His entire body was overwhelmed as he scraped down the hill against the grass and toward the trees surrounding Bolshevik. The turtleneck helped mitigate a little of the damage, but cuts and bruises were already forming all over him. It took a few seconds for the Odmience to even register everything he did. As he pushed up, a chipped bit of tooth slid out of his mouth, and stars shined before his eyes. It was a minute before he remembered his purpose as the train approached the opposite side of the bridge. When the thought of Lipov jumping off the train struck the Odmience, he forced himself up from the grass. He somehow survived phase 1 of his plan. Now he had to retreat. The Odmience rode in the back of a large truck, surrounded by bags of flour and boxes with cans and bottles and other foodstuffs. He couldn't see, but he felt sure Lipov checked on him in the rearview mirror to confirm he hadn't run off. Years passed since he'd made any attempt, but Lipov never trusted him. The truck was silent apart from an occasional shift of the containers when Lipov drove over a bump. Their journey went on like that for an hour. Lipov only broke the silence to mumble, "Get down," when they reached their destination. The truck went silent save for a creak to a halt. "Evening, officer." "ID." The voice was that of an older, rugged man. The Odmience couldn't see Lipov well, but he made out the pass of a card. The man on the opposite side of the truck mumbled something the boy couldn't hear and said, "Go ahead." After a few more minutes of nothing but car sounds, Lipov parked. At the Odmience's feet was a gigantic, empty burlap sack. With a nod from his leader, the Odmience sat atop the open sack and clutched his knees to his chest. In his already warm costume, the heat was overwhelming. The boy hoped he wouldn't be waiting for long. The doors in the back of the truck were opened. Lipov made some indiscernible small talk with someone else in the back as the objects were loaded onto a cart. Eventually, the Odmience's bag was lifted and loaded on with the rest. With a tiny squeaking noise, they closed in on their destination. "Stay pretty quiet around here?" Lipov could adapt to a number of dialects surprisingly well when he cared to. "We don't get the real weirdos. They're up at Blackgate," the other man said. "This place is pretty much always the most normal part of the city, I've always thought. The girls here have made some bad decisions, but they've still got their wits. Least, that's what I think." A little more silence between them followed. Doors creaked, the wheels of the cart slid against the floor. "Sorry about this, but I've been holding it since we left town. Is there a bathroom on the way to the kitchen?" Sure. Down the hallway there." The cart turned. The Odmience turned with it. "Protocol says I need to accompany you in. Sorry about that." "Rules are rules," Lipov said. "Lead the way." The Odmience sank deeper into his hold. He knew it was coming. He closed his eyes and braced himself for the worst. A door slid open. The cart rolled over a small threshold. You need to bring the cart in here?" the other man asked. There came a shink and a slash. The Odmience heard the gasp loud and clear, but was sure it didn't make it past the door. Then came a slam as the body hit the ground. The Odmience peeked out enough to confirm what had taken place. Saw Lipov as he went to work stripping the body before the blood went cold, and shifted his character from delivery driver to women's jail guard. The boy retreated back into the burlap bag. Lipov stuffed his coveralls in with him and began to roll the cart again. Within a few minutes, the acoustic suggested the two moved into a much larger room. It was mostly quiet, though some voices the Odmience couldn't understand echoed somewhere in the distance. With nothing but those far-off sounds and the rolling noises of the cart, the Odmience settled in for a while. But then he heard a light tap, tap, tap of some material against iron. "Jillian Miranda Fanning? Inmate A141? What? Warden's calling for you. Come with me, please." "Ha! Bitch, you're in so much trouble. I didn't do anything. I swear "Now, Miss Fanning," Lipov said. With more mocking from the girl's cellmate, the Odmience sensed her approach as Lipov slid the door shut and locked it again. Lipov turned the cart around and began back the way they'd come. "What the hell is this about?" the girl said. "I told you—" "Did you enjoy your little stint in the power armor, Miss Fanning?" What?" "I read all about you. You and your friends were overwhelmed by the Batgirl. She snuffed you out rather quickly, didn't she?" "What are you getting at, creepshow?" "Do you want to pay the Batgirl back for how she humiliated you?" "Of course I do! But what does—" "I'm putting together a little team, Miranda," Lipov said. "We saw your antics, and I believe your skills could be something incredible with a little more direction. Do you like the sound of that?" I mean, they confiscated my suit. I'm already serving a jail term right now. Trial's not for months. What are you gonna do, break us all out? Richie's still in the hospital." "All in good time," Lipov said. "That little team of yours, what name were you using again?" "The Reapers. I like it. I like it a lot." "So, where are we going now, then? I still don't even know who you're supposed to be. If they catch me, they're going to make my sentence even worse." "I wouldn't worry about that now," Lipov said. "You can tell them you're my captive, your friend with the sonic gauntlets. Where did she end up getting placed?" "Tracy? I think she's in cell block G." "Perfect. Let's pay her a visit." Early one morning in mid-May, a single nun made her way into St. Raphael's Church along the western edge of Bolesławiec. There was talk of someone who'd potentially vandalized the old church, and the sisters took turns cleaning up the mess after Father Nils confirmed there was no perpetrator to be found. That morning the task fell to Sister Mary Katya. Sister Katya was a tall, round woman in her early 40s, and she always enjoyed the short walk to the church to contemplate and pray. When she arrived at St. Raphael's, there was a note waiting for her near the baptismal font. Simple statements and instructions from Father Nils that he had a quick errand to run, and there were, again, random pieces of litter scattered in the downstairs kitchen, stolen from the church's charitable stocks. "Bless whatever soul has to steal like this." Sister Katya shook her head and descended the stairs. When she made it halfway down, she froze as if she heard something. After a few seconds, she continued to listen carefully as she stepped downwards. There was something there, light like a scurry. "Father Nils?" she called as she reached the bottom of the stairs. "Is that you?" There came another quick shuffle, followed by complete silence. Sister Katya noted the broom and dustpan leaned against the wall. She at first grabbed the broom and held it to herself as a weapon, but quickly dropped her guard and muttered, "Father, forgive me." She cleared her throat and called out, "Are you the thief?" Nothing came from the kitchen. The nun approached with caution. "I'm not going to hurt you," she said. "I'm not even going to stop you. I just want to help you." Still, no new noises came. Sister Katya passed into a dim room and flicked on the light. A faint crinkle sounded from the pantry in the corner. "I don't want you to go without," Sister Katya said. "And I don't want you to be afraid. I'm only here to help." She approached the pantry and hesitated for a moment before touching the handle of the door. She didn't know if the figure within would be aggressive, if he would strike when she revealed herself. But with a small prayer for strength and comfort, Sister Katya opened the door. The tiny body within collapsed before she could even see his face. Without so much as a choke or a gasp, the boy clutched Sister Katya's shoes and sobbed. Sister Katya didn't know how to react. The boy's cries overwhelmed her prayer-fueled thinking when she opened the door. He stank of sweat and urine. His clothes were caked with mud and grass stains. When Sister Katya knelt and held his face, she was taken aback for a second by all the scars and scratches that ran along him. As soon as she removed her hand, the boy began to sob again. Sister Katya did not know what to make of him, did not know where he'd come from or why he was there. All she knew was the Lord must have guided him out from a horrific place. Going with nothing but feeling, the nun settled a hand on his back. "It's all right, son. You're safe now."